We have our next leader here and social equity applicant and license, or I can say brand owner of Pico, Timeka Drew. If you don't mind unmuting yourself, please, and joining the conversation. And thank you once again,
Yes. Hi,
Mariah.
everyone. Yes,
Hello,
thank you so much
Tamika.
for having me. So excited to be here.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Tamika. And like I said, once again, appreciate your support this last year and everything in context to everything, right, that I know you have going on. So appreciate it. Can you let the audience know here a little bit about how you qualified and what you're currently doing in the cannabis industry, and maybe 2 or 3 minutes, and we'll go from there.
Sure. Well, I will say I qualified as a social equity applicant because I was living in beautiful Leimert Park, raised my kids there. I have four kids for 13 years. So I was able to qualify that way, and I was a leader in the nonprofit space for quite some time and was low income due to that. So, but I will say that the thing that made me able to be a phase three round one applicant was the work of a lot of the folks on this call, the work of the Social Equity Owners and Workers Association, because Ms. Timeka Drew was number 230 something on that list. And so I barely got through when the changes were made to the ordinance to really increase the amount of people that would be able to participate in the program. And I just really can't express enough appreciation and really just love to be able to talk about that as something that really showed the power of the people on the ground to be able to really just change everything for 100 of us. And if we can continue to stay strong and use our voices and stay connected as a community, we can continue to do this throughout the country. The regulators might make some mistakes, and they might not even realize they're making mistakes because we're learning things every day about these programs. And so the more that we can say, hey, this is what's happening, these are the changes that we need to make and stand together and do that, the more that we can win. So I really wanted to be able to lift that work up and say, that is actually why I'm able to stand here as a retail licensee, is the work of actual human beings on the ground, changing that regulatory framework.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing that. And yes, I always feel we always are standing on the shoulders of those that came before us as an advocate. So definitely growing and continuing that cycle. Um, Before we get into maybe some pointers there, can you give us a little bit more about your experience getting into this industry? Um, you know, Not to state the obvious, but as to me, Kika yourself, first African American women here in Los Angeles, biggest marketplace to have a license and be there with the big dogs, as they say, right? So how is that experience, and what are things that we all should, man, woman, LGBTQ, anybody have to worry about when they're in those rooms, or to be able to get to the point that the rooms you've been in, that I know you've been in?
Well, I will say, I came into cannabis as a medical patient, and I first came to LA going to law school, and I had to withdraw because I was so sick. And I started going to my medical dispensary, and they were kind of like, you can't afford to buy the weed you need to get better, so why don't you let us hire you? And I began to advocate for medical patients, advocating for doctors to give recommendations to patients, starting to let patients know where they can go to get their medicine. But I really, from a very early time when we saw legalization was going to happen, I was active in the legacy industry. I was active as a medical cannabis collective, someone who ran a medical cannabis collective and was making medicine for patients. And that was the way that I qualified as a phase two licensee in Los Angeles. So I held cultivation license and I hold manufacturing license currently, which is how we manufacture my brand Bico. And I really found early on that one of the things I started to hear was kind of like there are social equity applicants and owners, and then there are kind of corporate people and more real industry people. And that was like right off the bat. And I saw that as a huge problem. And I said to myself, you know, I need to make sure that I am one of these social equity applicants, but I'm also one of these industry corporate people, so that, you know, I'm able to kind of be in those rooms helping guide and build what I feel corporations should be doing in order to help support us in these programs as well. So in my journey, a big part of what I've been doing is not letting people tell me that there are limits to what I'm allowed to do as a Black woman in the space. You know, we see a lot of white men in the space. They sit on boards, they have brands, they own retail locations, they are a part of many different corporations, and everybody applauds them for their new consultancy that they've started. But then when women talk about having multiple projects, people will say very quickly, can you really handle that? Should you really maybe choose one lane? And we absolutely should not be choosing one lane right now. We need to be choosing all the lanes and figuring out how those lanes work together to really be able to build the wealth that we need to dump back into our communities. So that's really been something that I've been focusing on personally. And I think there's just so many different ways for us to approach this industry and our licenses and our businesses. And so just don't let anybody tell you there is one way. You know, take pages from everybody's book that sound interesting and be creative, because this is such a new world and a nascent state that we can really kind of make it into anything we need it to be.
Wow, amazing. I mean, I think Zoom needs to add a mic drop reaction. I couldn't find it. We might just end on that note.
I appreciate you.
So, you know, definitely, maybe we can end on a few points of locking, you know, keep it going. You know, top 3 points that we should look out for, those of us in the coming in. And as you said, I mean, if you've already hit some really powerful things, so maybe a more, you know, if you want to kind of continue that thought, or just kind of surmise the top 3 things people need to look out for.
Well, I'll say in general, you know, one of the things that people definitely need to look out for, and people have been covering this, is just, you know, really like limiting your value, really trying to get you to rush into things or sign things that don't make sense, or maybe that you don't understand. And I think that now more than ever, especially as we're waiting to see how things might change right this moment for the phase 3 round 1 applicants like myself, that haven't kind of figured it all out yet and are still talking to partners and looking at properties and figuring out how things are going to go. You know, make sure that you understand that no matter what, even though it feels like a pressure cooker that we're in right now, we still have a lot of options, and we're still the ones with the asset. You know, we don't need to be forced and pushed and bullied into something that doesn't make sense, or that makes us feel worried. This is definitely the time to kind of sit back, make sure that you're with the people that have the right values, and be willing to bend and change as we see that we're going to be allowed to do some things. Like, I know some people are looking at situations in their community plan area that if in 3 weeks they'll be able to change to a different community plan area, that might be something that would really benefit them and their business, and they would be able to work with maybe even different partners if that were to happen. So just being aware of the way that these changes that are coming could affect your current talks or your current possibilities.
That's great. I mean, I think the flexibility of and being able to be you know, aware of the policies and the opportunities and being ready, you know, is all part of that, is all you guys had said. So wow, thank you so much for sharing all of your thoughts. I would ask the same question. Do you partake, as they say? And if so, is it THC, indica, hybrid?
I love that I can get away with seeming like I may not partake. I do partake every day, and all of them. I claim them all. I have all the sativa, the indica, the hybrid, the CBD, all in my locked shelves. So I very much appreciate the beauty of this plant, and I literally would not be standing here before anyone right now without it, and its many iterations. So I will check with that.
Okay, well, thank you.